Hello boys and girls and teachers everywhere. For today's lesson there are a few things you're going to need. You will need a pencil, an eraser, some paper to draw on as well. You're going to need a tissue for some of the shading techniques that we're looking at today. And for the later parts of today's lesson you will need a dice or an iPad that you can use to roll a dice with. And you might even need some pens as well, depending on how you'd like to draw. Please feel free to pause the video at any point so that you can follow along with what we're doing. In the first half of today's lesson, we are looking at different types of shading techniques. And in the second part of today's lesson, we are looking at how we can use those when drawing some interesting things. Please follow along and enjoy, and I look forward to seeing what you put together. There are many different ways in which we can shade. Today we're just going to practice 5 of them, and that's all it is. It's about practice. It's not about getting them right or wrong, it's just about seeing if we can learn the skills that we need to make something look darker or lighter, depending if there is sun hitting it or not. So in each of these examples, we are going to pretend that there is a big happy sun that is shining down on top of our circle or our sphere shape. And what we are going to draw is we are going to draw ourselves 5 nice big circles to start with. They don't have to be perfect circles, but if you want to draw around something circular so that you have a more smooth shape, you're more than welcome to. Mine's getting a little bit bigger as it progresses. It's almost like a lopsided snowman. The first one we're going to look at is stippling. Now stippling, in effect, is the art of using dots very close together to try and make an area look light or dark. So if I look at this circle, and it's going to be the same across all of the 5, the sun is brightest at the top. It's hitting the top with as much of the sun as it possibly can. As we move down the circle or the sphere shape, it gets much darker as the sun is unable to get to those areas. So the sun is bouncing off or bouncing away, and we're not seeing as much of that light area down here. So how do we do this with stippling? Well, stippling is the creation of dots. So the first thing I'm going to start doing is I will start at the bottom. I'm going to start adding lots and lots of dots in this area at the bottom where it is very dark. I'm going to fill this area in as much as I can, and then once I'm happy with where it's up to, I can even try starting to move the stippling up, or the dots up. Now the further I get up this circle or sphere shape, I should see less dots, and at the very top there's like a nice bright area up the top around here, which I'm just drawing on very lightly, where there's very little, if any, dots. So I'm going to start spreading these out a little bit more as we get closer towards the top. With stippling, if we want something to look a little bit lighter, we spread the dots out further. If we want it to look darker, we put these dots much closer together, and there are many more of these dots that feature. Now they don't have to be perfect dots, and in fact if they're little slashes or dashes then that's fine too, because it helps to fill in that area a little bit. At the top around here, there might just be 1 or 2 little dots. And so we don't go from lots of dots to very few dots, I'm just going to block in this area a little bit more so that we've got a nice start. I'd like to put a little bit more time into that, and I will later, but for now we're going to move on to the next shading type. The next one we're looking at is scumbling. Scumbling, also known as scribbling, is the effect of kind of doing these random scribbly lines, and if they're close together you might notice it starts to look very dark, and if they're spread out a little bit more then it will look lighter. So I'm going to work from the same practice as before. The top of my sphere or my circle is going to be my light area. Around about 1/3 of the way down it's going to be my medium area, and down the bottom here it's going to be my dark area. So down in the bottom I'm going to just start by scribbling, and I'm going to do lots of scribbling very close together. I've got some outside my circle, doesn't matter, I'm just going to erase it later. All I'm doing is just blocking in that area, as much scribbling as we can do. Now I've done the super dark part, I'm going to start spreading my scribbling out a little bit more. It's not going to go over the top of each other as much. It's going to allow me to give the idea that it's getting slightly lighter as we get to the top. And put just a small bit of scribbling on the top as well. And then just balance out these areas in the middle. Now I can even choose to go back into the dark area down here as well if I want to just build that up a little bit more. For scribbling, it doesn't matter if you lift your pencil off the page, it doesn't matter what direction you go in, it really is just about having fun and blocking in that area. Next one, shading. Shading is the traditional way of shading. So when lots of people talk about tone or value in their work, they're talking about this type of shading, okay, which is more realistic. To help me with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start again by blocking in where my light area is at the top, where my medium area is going to be. It's almost like a little smiley face down at the bottom. I'm actually going to start the other way around for this one. So I'm going to start in my really light area. And I'm going to do something a little bit special that I haven't done with the rest of the shading techniques. And that is moving my hand up the pencil. To do the really light area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fingers at the very top of the pencil. What this is going to mean is it's going to make it really difficult for me to press hard. If I can't press hard with the pencil, I can't make dark marks. I can't shade too much. I'm going to try and follow the shape of the circle or the sphere as much as I can, because I don't want this to be scribbling, so I'm going to try and follow that shape. It is difficult to do though when you're holding the pencil at the top, and you might drop it a few times. I'm going to work my way down through this medium area again. All I'm doing here is I'm just starting to block this area in. I'm not pressing very hard because it is very, very difficult to press hard. And if I go outside my circle, it doesn't matter too much because I can erase and fix that later. Now I'm in the darker area now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my hand a little bit down that pencil, which means I can now press a little bit harder, and straight away you can see the difference there. It starts to get much darker, much quicker. I can also adjust how heavily I press down on the pencil. What that will allow me to do is to determine how much shading I want to get onto an area, how much tone we're going to see. Now the secret of good shading is that it takes a really long time to do, to make it look realistic. And sometimes that's why people like these different techniques like scumbling or cross-hatching we'll get to, or even stippling. So you're going to need to develop a little bit of patience while you're doing this. And that's okay if you don't get it straight away at first, because it's going to take a little bit of time. Now, you might notice I also have an eraser on my table as well. And I can actually use this as well to help me. So if I've overshaded an area up here, like I've made it too dark, I can get my eraser. I can use that to just lighten up that area here. Okay? So I then try to maintain that light, medium, dark tone. Okay, we've got two left to do. We've got smudging and we've got cross-hatching. Now, for smudging, you're going to need to either use a finger. If you don't like getting messy, then what I would suggest is to go get a tissue, which you can use for this one. Smudging is very, very similar to shading. The only difference is you can use your finger or you can use a tissue to try and blend the areas together. And lots of people like doing this one. So again, I'm going to start off, I'm going to have myself a nice light area at the top, a medium area in the middle, and then my dark area, just getting slightly bigger if ever I get on. Just going to start on the bottom. Now I'm going to start down the bottom, and you'll notice that my hand is in the middle of my pencil, which means I can press quite hard as I'm applying the tone to it. And then after I've blocked this area in, I'm going to move my hand further up the top of the pencil. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to move this a little bit higher now, which means it's a little bit more difficult for me to press too hard. And you might need to sharpen your pencil a few times when you do this, because when you're shading, you tend to work down a pencil quite quickly. And again, I'm going to move it a little bit higher so I can get even lighter marks on my page. I'm just going to colour that area in a little bit. Now, I'll tell you a secret, I don't really like using my fingers when I do this one, so I'm going to go get a tissue so I can smudge it together. Now I've got myself a tissue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrunch it up together to make a nice point at the end. And with that, what I can then do is I can start trying to smooth out this area. Now, very, very quickly, what you'll notice is that circle area starts to become a lot smoother. There's like a nice gradient, we would call it, which goes from dark to light, depending how I've shaded it. It looks very, very smooth. It looks almost like a metallic object. I feel like I've gone a little bit too heavy on the top, so what I can do is I can use that eraser again to just lighten up some of that area at the top. And if I feel like I've erased too much, I can smudge back into it, and I can keep going back and forth like that. Last one now, cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is actually one of my favourite ones. Again, I'm going to start off the same way. Most light is hitting the top, and there's a medium amount of light hitting the middle, and then darker on the bottom. So cross-hatching is the creation of tone or darkness or lightness through lines that go in two different directions. So first of all, we'll start with them going one way, and then we'd add almost what looks like lots of crisscrosses on top of one another. So I'm going to start, and I can move my hand up the pencil if I want to for this one, but I'm actually going to keep it mostly in the middle. I'm going to start in the darkest area. I'm going to start with my lines going in one direction. This one you might find that you draw outside the circle a little bit more, and that's fine, because we've got an eraser to tidy that one up afterwards. And then all I'm going to do now is I'm going to start adding those lines going in a different direction. The closer together you have the lines, the darker it will be. So as I move up to my midsection now, I'm going to spread those lines out a little bit more. And then as we get towards the top, I'm just going to have just one or two lines as we go. Now there's ways that I can make each of these different types of shading better, and there's ways in which I can use these different types of shading to try to add different colour or shading or tone to different objects or different drawings. In the next part of our lesson, after we finish our 5 circles, we're going to try and do that. So good luck with your 5 circles, and I'll see you for the next bit later.